Welcome to SportsBeat KC, the Kansas City Star sports podcast. I'm Blair Kirchhoff, and on today's show, we're talking college football with the writers who know them best. Kellis Robinett covers Kansas State, and the Wildcats enter this season with Big 12 championship rings. K-State is defending its conference title in a new 14-team Big 12 with a few holes to fill, but quarterback Will Howard returns, as does the entire offensive line, and enough pieces on defense to leave the impression K-State could contend for another title. Then we switch to Columbia and talk to Chris Kwiecinski, who covers the Missouri Tigers. It's a big year for Mizzou and coach Eli Drinkwitz, who has handed over play-calling duties to his new offensive coordinator, Kirby Moore. What kind of difference can a coordinator make? Well, just check out the defense from Missouri last year when they had a new coordinator. Shreyas Laddha covers the Kansas Jayhawks, and there's much interest in Coach Lance Leipold's third season, especially since the second one produced a bowl game. Don't expect KU to sneak up on any team this year, but they may not need the element of surprise with quarterback Jalen Daniels and many returning starters. Okay, let's get started talking college football. Kellis Robinett covers Kansas State for the Star and the Wichita Eagle, and it's been an off-season of ring fitting and crown fitting and celebrating a Big 12 championship. I know there have been many junctures since Kansas State put away TCU in the Big 12 title game last year, where Chris Kleiman and players have said that's in the past. It's not an issue. But some preseason magazines, I've seen Kansas State, as a contending team, and I think they will be a contending team. Are you convinced that they've got 2023 on their minds and are ready to go this season?
I think they do, and I'll give you one example of why I think that way. I really don't see Kansas State football players wear their championship rings anywhere. They didn't do it at Big 12 Media Days. They don't do it when they show up for interviews with us. When I see them out in the street in town, I don't see it. I'm sure they wear them sometimes. I mean, they made a big deal about getting them last season. It's a heck of an accomplishment. They'll remember it forever. But it really does seem like they've put last season behind them. A lot of these guys were on that team, but you got to give a lot of credit to people like Deuce Vaughn, Felix Anudike-Uzomah, other people who are in the NFL. I think the current roster at Kansas State realizes that. They want to forge ahead and create their own path, make their own legacy here in Manhattan. And yeah, I really don't hear people talking all that much about last season anymore. And more than anything, I think this team just wants to prove that, in the past they've wanted to prove people wrong. I think this year we have a group that wants to prove people right because people are picking them a little bit higher than they have in the past. And that's a new feeling, and I think that helps them create a little bit of separation from last year.
For sure, they are being picked upper division. I see them in the top five, along with Texas, OU, Texas Tech, TCU, mostly. Seems like those five schools. Maybe you can throw Oklahoma State in there as well. Those are the schools that I see picked, in the upper echelon of the Big 12. Of course, with a new 14-team league, there was a true upper echelon. If you were picked fifth last year, you're middle of the pack. You're picked fifth this year or fourth or wherever. If you're one of those two, you're in the pretty much in the upper quadrant. So, and I think if you're thought of in that way, a top 5 or 6 program, you've got to feel pretty good about your chances feel good about having a team good enough to get to the championship game, because it is the top 2 teams, and Kansas State finished second a year ago and got into the title game and won the championship. So, all right, Kellis, what kind of team is it? How's it going to be different than last year? We got the same quarterback that started the Big 12 title game and the Sugar Bowl game against Alabama. Will Howard is back, but he is missing a couple of key offensive pieces. What's going to be different about this K-State? Let's start with the offense.
Yeah, so Kansas State is in an interesting spot this season in that they lose a lot of firepower from last season. Some big names to the NFL. Already mentioned Felix and Deuce. They're also having to replace Julius Brents, Josh Hayes, Echo Boydo, a lot of players that Kansas State fans have seen for years and years play in purple. So not easy in that sense, but at the same time, Kansas State benefits from being one of the few schools in the Big 12 and the entire country that brings back their starting quarterback, their offensive coordinator, the defensive coordinator, and their head coach. That is a lot of stability. And on top of that, they also bring back 6 starters on the offensive line. Not just 5, 6, because Taylor Portier, who's really good but just can't seem to stay healthy, is back and healthy. Knock on wood, he can survive a few more than a few games this season. So they've got a lot of pieces back. They're hoping to basically just to build on that this season with a couple guys that I think can make some big debuts here. And the 3 guys I've got circled that I really want to see in game 1 are receiver Keegan Johnson, a transfer from Iowa. His numbers were never very good with the Hawkeyes, but you kind of have to throw that out the window because it's Iowa, the team that just does not score many points. They win with defense. They win with special teams. They can even get to like 21 points in the game. It's an amazing feat. But people have raved about him all camp. He could come in and be a very nice upgrade there as a wide receiver 1. And then in the backfield, I really want to see what DJ Giddens can do now that he's no longer in Deuce Vaughn's shadow. And then also Trayshawn Ward, a transfer in from Florida State. He's not a carbon copy of Deuce Vaughn, but if you get the ball to him in space, he'll make you miss and he'll gain yards. So they've got a nice 1-2 punch at running back coming in that fans haven't seen much of in the past. And they've got some new talent at receiver. That's really where the eyes are going to be in this first game.
Okay. On the defensive side, they've got some starters returning, but they're probably a few more question marks on the defensive side than on offense.
There are. And the place where you feel good about is linebacker, because they bring back Austin Moore, who led the team in tackles last season. They bring back Daniel Green, who's been a staple on defense for years and years.
Yeah, that was a surprise, him coming back.
Yeah, big time surprise that he came back. Most people figured he was gone. But he's back for another year, so you won't find really a more experienced linebacker core in the entire Big 12. So they're going to lean on that, where they're looking to, get some new faces involved is corner. They'll have some new players out there. Safety, they'll have new players back there. And defensive tackle, they'll have some brand new players in there. So really they're replacing half their defense, the majority of their back end. And if you're really looking for things to watch in the first game on defense, you'll want to be looking at how do guys like Jacob Parrish, Keenan Garber, and Will Lee replace 2 cornerbacks who started for years and years at Kansas State. And then how do people like VJ Payne and Marcus Siegel step in at safety? I've kind of overlooked it this preseason just because Joe Klanderman, their defensive coordinator, has had a really good knack for basically just plugging in new guys at those spots and being just fine, whether it's injuries or transfers. Whoever they put back there seems to be a very capable player. So I'm just expecting more of the same, but you obviously can't take things for granted. So we'll see how they do in game 1.
And because it's Kansas State, you have to talk special teams. They take it so seriously, and they're so good on it with the special teams. But they lose the kicker, Ty Zettner, who won the Big 12 title with his field goal in overtime to beat TCU. And they lose Malik Knowles, right, the return specialist. Those are two big-time guys.
Definitely.
So it's different at K-State when they have to find replacements. Do they have adequate replacements there?
Yeah, the kicking game will be interesting because Ty Zettner, as you and I both know, wasn't just their kicker. He was also their punter. He was also their kickoff specialist. Probably could have found a way to hold the ball and kick it at the same time if he really wanted to. But he's gone. He's off in the NFL now. So who are they going to turn to replace him? We're looking at Chris Tennant at place kicker, a guy from Kansas City who's got a really big leg. He's just struggled with accuracy in the past. The hope is that after last year he got replaced, maybe now he can come back with a little bit more motivation and be a better kicker. I think he will be. And punter, we're looking at Jack Bloomer, who has punted before, and I think he'll be fine. And then at kickoff return, it will be interesting to see what they do without Malik Knowles back there. According to their depth chart, they're going to go with Keegan Johnson and Phillip Brooks. And yeah, I've never seen Keegan Johnson return a kick, but I guess you gotta figure he's okay at it because special teams they're not just going to put a bum back there. But that'll be interesting. This is more intrigue than I can remember starting a season of special teams for a while.
Okay, and I want to ask you about a potential, let's say an early season swing game for Kansas State. I mean, there are plenty of, every conference game's a swing game, but how about any game in the first half of the schedule that might be a tell about what K-State will be about this year?
You could go one of two ways here. I think Kansas State has a tricky non-conference schedule. Troy comes to Manhattan, which is the kind of team that Kansas State has struggled with in that spot previously. Chris Kleiman, since he came to Manhattan, has already lost at home to Arkansas State and to Tulane. Troy fits the same kind of profile. They're a really good group of 5 team. They won 12 games last year. Little known fact, outside of Georgia, the longest winning streak in the entire country belongs to Troy. They've got a salty defense. They're not just going to come in here and let Kansas State score 50 on them. I do expect Kansas State to win, but if they don't bring it, that's going to be a tough game for them. I think, though, the bigger swing game is the next week at Missouri. And I say that because the Tigers got their butts kicked when they came out to Manhattan last season. Wasn't even close, 40-12. They needed some late game timeout, theatrics, even to score the 12 that they got. I have to imagine they're not happy with the Wildcats. I think they're going to be mad. I think they're going to be angry. I think they're going to be motivated. I would still probably pick Kansas State in that game, but going on the road to an SEC school that has revenge on its mind, never easy. Can Kansas State handle that? I think if they do, you're looking at probably another 9-win season, 8 at the worst, which, would be pretty good for this team with all they have to replace. But if they lose that game, I just don't know that they have quite enough talent on this roster to bounce back from it and do what they did last season and reel off a 7-2 record in Big 12 play to have a great schedule, a great season that way. I think they need to go 3-0 in the non-conference and enter league play with that momentum. So that's why I'm picking that game.
All right, and you've already picked the final record. Remind us how you picked it for the Eagle and the Star.
Yeah, so I'm going with 9-3 for this team. I think they will win those games that I just mentioned, even though they will be tricky. I think they'll fall someplace in conference play. I've thrown out that maybe they'll stumble against UCF in their Big 12 home opener. It could be anywhere else. Just for whatever reason, historically, Kansas State seems to drop one game at home every season you don't really see coming. I think they'll pick up one game you don't necessarily see coming on the road, and then 2 other games in there won't go their way. So that'll be the final record.
Very good. Nobody covers Kansas State better than Kellis Robinett. Thanks, Kellis.
All right, anytime, Blair.
We are joined by Chris Kwiecinski of the Columbia Tribune, and the Tribune shares its coverage of Missouri athletics with the Kansas City Star. Chris, how you doing, man?
I'm good today. Ready for game 1.
Yes, it is here. College football season has arrived. Week 1. We're through week 0, and Missouri unscathed through week 0, and they are kicking off the season Thursday night against South Dakota. They got the better South Dakota team to play. You don't want anything to do with South Dakota State. They're preseason number 1 in FCS. South Dakota is the one you want to play.
Yeah, looking at South Dakota State, I covered FCS football for a couple of years, and the one thing you can do, the one thing you don't want to do, that is to underestimate any FCS opponent, and you do not want to take them lightly, especially if it's South Dakota State. Those guys, they're tough, but South Dakota they have a good history too. It's kind of on the upswing, but they've got a good football history too.
Yeah, for sure. And I've covered enough North Dakota State upsets of major college powers over the years. You're absolutely right. So, all right, Mizzou, 4th season for Eli Drinkwitz, but first season for Kirby Moore, the new offensive coordinator. One of the bigger developments offseason for Missouri. Things are going to be different in Columbia with Moore as the offensive coordinator. How so?
I think it's one you logistically got to look at it is Drinkwitz is giving off play calling, which is one thing that he always brought with him to Columbia. Coming from not only NC State as the offensive coordinator to App State as the head coach, and now to Columbia, that was his thing. It was play calling and recruiting, and giving up play calling had to have been hard. That's a testament to just how far he's come as a head coach and how dedicated he is to maturing in that role. And it's not easy. It's not easy to look yourself in the mirror and say, this is the thing I really like to do, but we'd be better off if someone else did it. There's a lot of self-reflection he had to come to, but getting Kirby Moore, I think, is something that's going to affect Mizzou, not just, short term, this year, but in the long run as a quarterback's coach and as a guy that can probably recruit too and kind of scheme up some interesting plays. And he's a young mind. It's a young breath of fresh air for this team. And it's exciting to just think how he's going to work with guys like Luther Bird and Sam Horn, Tavoris Jones, the running game with Nate Pete, Cody Schrader. There's so many pieces. He's got, keys to the car now. Have fun.
And the decision on the quarterback, obviously Kirby Moore will be involved in coaching up the quarterback. The decision lies with Eli Drinkwitz, not only who plays, but how the shuffle may work early on. Tell us about what he has said about playing Brady Cook and Sam Horn and even Jake Garcia and maybe another candidate.
Yeah, I think right now it's coming down to Sam and Brady. I think that's the gist of what we got last Friday when we spoke to Drinkwitz about the week one and preparing for everything. He basically said, it's coming down to these two. Both of them are going to play. The quarterback decision is not final yet. It's not over. It's still in the midst of everything. It's still being talked about and being won. And the one thing he said that was really interesting is no quarterback in the race, from Jake to Sam to Brady, even Jabari Johnson, I believe, a 4-star freshman, didn't play themselves out of the race. They didn't play to the point where they said, you're not in the race anymore. We're going to take you out. All the quarterbacks played well. It's just Brady and Sam have separated themselves from the rest, and they've earned that. They've earned the shot to kind of go, toe to toe in a game in a way that's kind of interesting because we've seen it work. Like last year with Michigan, JJ McCarthy, Caden McNamara, I believe, did it to great effect. And I remember a couple of years ago in 2016, Notre Dame tried it with Malik Zaire and Deshaun Kaiser, and it did not work. They lost that first game to Texas in a tough fashion because they rotated and they couldn't get any rhythm going. And I think that's on the mind of Eli. He wasn't really committal to, or really even telling us how he was going to do it, which makes sense. He's not going to play his hand before he even enters the game. But right now, I think we're going to start to see a little bit of that dance. How it unfolds, I'm not sure, but it wouldn't surprise me if Brady starts the game 6-6, a touchdown. I don't think he's coming out. I think they're going to ride the rhythm that he has and kind of ride that. Same goes for Sam. If Sam comes in and goes 7 for 7 with a touchdown, they're just gonna ride it, see how far it goes. I do think Brady's going to be the first player or the first quarterback to take a snap because he's earned it. He's got the incumbent starter, a guy that's hasn't lost the job. But I think it's going to be interesting to see how both offenses run with Brady, who's more of a natural runner, than Sam, who's that 4-star quarterback with that enormous arm talent that he has. And we'll see how it plays out. But I know it's going to start with Brady for sure, I think.
And you mentioned the other weapons. They do have other weapons. Luther Burden, of course, didn't have huge numbers last year, but found the end zone quite frequently. And I'm really personally pulling for Nate Pete. I know it was a great story to have him come back to his hometown last year to finish his. We thought was finishing his college career. Turns out he's coming back for I guess his COVID year, extra eligibility year. And really hope that he comes up big in his super senior year. But with Missouri, and listen, so when I thought about Kirby Moore and what a difference a coordinator can make in a college football program, I think all I had to do was think about the defense, Missouri's defense last year, and the difference that Blake Baker made with the Tigers. So many of those guys are coming back this year, and if the offense can just take a few strides this season and the defense can maintain what it was or maybe even get a little bit better, this could be a pretty special team. They got a lot of talent on this defensive side. Oh,
without a doubt. And I mean, when you return, I think I was trying to crunch the numbers earlier today, and it seems like 10 of 11 starters, there's 10 of 11 players that got meaningful playing time are back. And that includes Dalen Carnell, who still had time at the star position when rotating with Martez Manuel, and that's a guy who seems to have a knack for the football. And it was crazy because he never he didn't play full time. He was spelled with Martez. Martez was the captain and the starter, and now he's going to have that opportunity. And I think the one thing I'm looking at is that one one spot, that one person who's coming in. And to me, that's Joe Moore. That's the guy that I'm watching, kind of filling in that defensive end spot where Isaiah McGuire left off when he got drafted by the Browns. I mean, they're in need of that consistent pass rush. Isaiah was that last year, so was Trajan Jeffcoat, but kicking Darius Robinson out to the edge and having Joe Moore go out there to a St. Louis guy, a Mizzou by name guy. His dad played at Mizzou. He's got that legacy there. There's a lot that this team can still show us that we haven't seen. And I think it kind of starts with the front four. Obviously with the rest of the team, you just mentioned it. I mean, if you have these guys coming back, Chris Amesdrain, Ennis Rakestraw, JC Carleys, Joseph Charleston, these guys can come back and play similar. That's great, but you want to be better. You want to see the team improve. And if they can take that next step, I mean, you're talking about not just the top half of the league defense. You're talking about maybe top 5, could even be top 3, which is how this team has that NFL talent. It's just sometimes it gets a little bit overlooked, especially when you play in a conference that has Georgia, that has Alabama. It's kind of hard. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what they can do to push themselves to the next level.
They definitely have some NFL dudes on defense. I'm really looking forward to seeing how that unit plays this year. All right, Chris, let me ask you this. Let's identify an early barometer game for the Tigers. Could be an SEC game, could be a non-conference game, but how about some game in the first 3, 4, 5 weeks that you think will help us define what the Tigers are about?
Yeah, it's interesting because it was this way last year too. It was the Kansas State game last year, and it's the same game around, in my opinion. And you've got this Kansas State team, which is coming off a Big 12 title that's coming to Faurot Field this year. We know that last year they went out there and got embarrassed in Manhattan. It got washed away in that terrible rainstorm. I mean, it was just kind of brutal waiting around with that thunder, the delay and everything. It was a weird game. But this time around, they seem a little bit more together. They seem a little bit, they know what to expect when they played that team. Obviously, Adrian Martinez was a quarterback. It's going to be Will Howard this time around. But that game is going to be that barometer just to tell you, how do you play against a top 25 team? How do you play against a team that's got expectations? But not only that, but that has proved it. And that's been a big thing with Mizzou this offseason. STP is their trademark call sign or rallying cry, something to prove it. Kansas State's a team that's proved it. They've gone out there, they've won. They played Alabama in a bowl game, and they got the brunt of a very angry Alabama, and that doesn't tell you exactly how their season went. But I mean, they've proved it. Mizzou wants to prove it, so it's time to prove it against a team that has done that, and they can win that game. I mean, you're talking about Mizzou potentially starting 5-0 going into Faurot Field on, I think it's October 7th when LSU comes to town, and that might be 2 5-0 teams. That would be like in year 4 of the Drinkwitz era. When you talk about the absolute best case scenario, that's what I think of. Starting 5-0 against a 5-0 LSU team, but where College Game Day is probably coming to Columbia because those are 2 ranked teams. Well, that's just kind of how I see it shaking out. That's that early barometer game I'm looking forward to. Very
good, excellent. All right, so and what about a final record for the Tigers? I think they're a bowl team, but they're in the SEC, and who the heck knows after Georgia, right? I mean. But what have you got? What have you got the Tigers finishing?
Yeah, I wrote this in a game by game prediction, and that I think they're 8-4 this year. I think they've got that. They got the talent to improve by a couple wins. I can see them starting. I can see them starting 5-0 going into that LSU game, and if you're 5-0, beginning of the season, as opposed to getting that 5th win in October, November, which is what Mizzou's done the last couple of years. I mean, that's huge. That's a huge turn for this program. And honestly, it's not going to be easy, especially when you consider, well, if you have Middle Tennessee State, South Dakota, yeah, you would assume you're going to win those games because Mizzou's like we mentioned, in year 4 Drinkwitz, you don't lose those games. But when you talk about beating a Memphis team, which is kind of angry at Mizzou with how everything shaked out moving from Memphis to St. Louis, and then beating a good Kansas State team, and then also being a very improved Vanderbilt squad in Nashville. That's going to be a little bit more difficult than I think people are expecting. But if you can do that, I mean, it's going to be hard in the SEC play. We all know that, especially with the trip to Georgia and Tennessee coming to Columbia, when for some reason Tennessee just can't stop boat racing Mizzou. But I think right now that 8-win mark would be a really good testament to how far this team has come. how far this program has come, the maturity that this team has had to face, and when you talk about Drinkwitz giving up play calling, but also, like you mentioned, the story with Nate Pete coming back for this last year. He didn't have to. When I asked him about that, I was like, "Why'd you come back?" He said, "This is the team." I felt comfortable. I felt like I had more to give, and there are so many great stories on this team, which deserve to be highlighted by the college game days and all that. And I think we're going to start seeing a lot of that come to fruition this year.
Chris, on this podcast, we also talked to beat writers for Kansas State and KU. And in both of those cases, I don't think, kind of no matter what happens this season, that the jobs are on the line for those programs, Chris Kleiman and Lance Leipold at those two schools. I don't think that's the case at Missouri. I think that there is some pressure on Eli Drinkwitz to perform in year 4. He did get a contract extension last year, but I think is he right at 500 overall as a coach and entering year 4? If he's not he's within 1 or 2 games of it, and under 500 in the SEC. So it's time to perform.
Yeah, I think you're spot on with that. His overall record's like 17-19. And that's when you factor in the 2 bowl games where they played without starters, the guys declaring for the draft. So you're right. It's kind of the anomaly where you can say, yeah, he's been 500. He's been just average. And I know that that's not what you want to be in an SEC school. But I think the most interesting part about that is he has to go back to the bowl game. He has to win it this year, I think. If he wins 8 games, then I think he's set. I think he's set for next year. But you can't go out and you can't do the same thing over and over again. I think that's what that extension last year was. It kind of said, hey, we believe in you. We think you can get there, but now you got to prove it. And that's a lot of pressure. It is, but also I think help expedite the process and the decision to hire an offensive coordinator. Say, well, if we're going to go all out, we got to do this the right way. But when it comes down to it, that pressure is going to be there. I know Drinkwitz is kind of not shrugged it off, but it's kind of acknowledged that it's always there. But there's always pressure. You're in the SEC, of course, but it's a little bit heightened this year, and wouldn't surprise me if they did start to struggle early on, that we kind of revisited this conversation and say, well, what's next? But like I said, the schedule kind of aligns to the point where this team can start pretty fast and pretty quick, and we'll start to see exactly how quick they can start.
Great stuff. Chris, really appreciate you stopping by and talking to us.
Thanks, Blair.
Shreyas Laddha, remind me that your first game covering Kansas football was indeed a loss, but it was an incredible loss, wasn't it?
It was. It was the infamous Liberty Bowl where they lost in triple overtime when Jason Bean's 2-point conversion pass sailed over the head, over the end zone. But it was a crazy game. I think they were down 31-7 at one point. They came back. It was a Jalen Daniels masterclass. I mean, it was everything you've ever wanted out of a football game except defense all at once.
Yeah. And sometime we won't bother our listeners with this, but a game like that is impossible to write because you're on deadline, and we'll just skip that drama. But that's those are the toughest games in the world. So they did lose that game, and they finished 6-7. And so when I look at after starting 5-0, so they just won 1 game in their last 7 games, and I look, okay, so that sets up as a sort of a letdown season coming up. But I don't know, not with this team. There just seems to be too much good offense coming back for this KU team. I think they can think about a bowl game again this year. What's your take? Let's start with the offense and the wealth of talent that's coming back on that side of the ball.
Yeah, I mean, I think ESPN had it's like the top returning teams. And Kansas was number 2 in the nation. They were number 1 in offensive, returning production. 91% of the team from last year returns on the offensive end. And I think it's 80% for the defense, so 85 or something like that together. But I was honestly super, super, stoked in a sense that they have Daniel Highshot coming back. You have ideally a healthy Jalen Daniels who's been battling some of the back issues throughout fall camp. This offense should be even better than last year. And Kotelnicki is, I mean, to say it lightly, I think he's an offensive genius. He's done a really good job with the players that he's been given and taking advantage of their talents and making a scheme that fits all of them. And last year they were ranked, I think, number 7 in yards per completion. They were ranked top 15 in a lot of offensive ranks. Really, until Jalon Daniels went down, that offense was really, really, top 10, top 5. And even with Jason Bean, it was humming a little bit. So I think it's going to be a team that's going to lean its offense to really deliver wins, I think.
Kotelnicki, of course, is the offensive coordinator and did a wonderful job with this team a year ago. Yeah, when you say sometimes it's not a great thing if you got a bunch of your players coming back, but I think in this case, such a talented offense a year ago. And the other thing, Shreyas, when I think about sizing up a team like Kansas, they're not going to sneak up on people. That might have happened a year ago, especially the wins over West Virginia and Houston early, Duke. They're not going to sneak up on people. They just might be good enough that may not matter. You know what they got. And Jalon Daniels is a special talent. You mentioned, nagging back injury. Heck, I'd put the guy in bubble wrap. I wouldn't have played him at all in the preseason. But he is a special guy, and preseason player of the year in the Big 12. Probably been a while since that has happened. What makes Jalon Daniels just so special?
I mean, he's an incredible, person off the field. His teammates rave about him, how great he is. He's an academic All-American. On the field, he works his tail off. I mean, I wrote a big feature on him and his journey to get to the point where he is the preseason player of the year. I mean, Kansas was his only offer really until a week before he was supposed to sign on the dotted line with Middle Tennessee. He could have given up and left when he was 0-9 his freshman year, or when he was third string and he was about to be redshirted. Then, of course, the 2 players ahead of him get hurt. He gets in the K-State game, plays it out, and then they were like, "Do you want to start the Texas game? You're going to lose your redshirt eligibility." He was like, "I got to do it." He has his coming out party, and the rest is history. It's a very cool story of a guy who wouldn't have any stars next to his name till really midway through his senior year. And, he can do it on both ends. He's a prolific passer. He was, I think, for a long time, number 1 in QBR in the entire nation. And he had over 500 yards on the ground in just 9 games. So Kansas is really relying on Jalon Daniels and his ability, because I can't remember the last time Kansas, besides maybe Todd Reesing, has that caliber of quarterback to headquarter them. I mean, and if he wasn't 5'10", I think he'd be getting a lot more draft buzz than he is right now. But he's special, and that offense and the team as a whole, they really believe in Jalon Daniels' talent. And I've been very high on him. And I said it in my game by game preview. If Jalon Daniels and the running back group can stay healthy the entire year, which is a big if, I think they could theoretically go 9-3. That's a lot of 50-50 games on that schedule, but why not Kansas? Why not beat OU this year? With all the talent returning in year 3 of Lance Leipold. And like you said, they've kind of been very cautious on everything for Jalon. I think they've been overly cautious a little bit with his back, and I don't blame them, because he is the face of Kansas football. So his if he can put together a season like he did last year or even better, Kansas is in really good shape.
All right, you threw a big record out there. We'll get to your final prediction here at the end of our segment, and you already had to do it for the newspaper, so it's already out there. But let's quickly talk about the defense. Back 7 strong, right? It's up front that there's some question marks and the reliance of some transfers to fill those holes. Can Kansas win some games this year without having to simply outscore people? Win games 49-42. Can they avoid that like they had to do a year ago?
I think it's possible, but I look at the schedule and how tough it is for Kansas. It's really going to come down to, the defense as a whole has to take a step. And I think they'll take a step forward. I just don't know if the step is from number 127 in the nation to top 80. Like that's a big step, right? If it's a step of like 15, they go top 115 defense, that's not that big of a step, but that's a step. So how big of a step they take, I think, is a really big thing. Another thing I wrote about it today is just how do they get pressure to the quarterback? They brought in a lot of transfers, and all of the transfers are basically either starting or vying for like the second spot, backup spots for the defensive line. It was interesting because I talked to Dominic Pooney today, and I asked him, how's the D-line looked? And he was like, the defensive tackles, they're all great. The defensive ends, those guys, they can really pressure quarterback, like they're going to surprise a lot of people this year. I've heard that from a lot of the offensive line of Kansas, which is a big, offensive line. And I think we've talked about this before off the air. Kansas is a lot bigger than they've been previously. They brought in a lot of beefy, big dudes who can really kind of take up space and create space on the D-line and the O-line. But the secondary is returning a lot of starters. And the one thing, Jacoby Bryant was the only first-team player for Kansas last year. You're looking for him to kind of put that protection, what he was doing last year and return with it. Of course, a big thing for him is he always gambles. He plays like, Trayvon Diggs from the Dallas Cowboys. He gambles a lot in his plays. It worked out last year. He's going to work out this year. That's a big, question mark. I really am interested to see what happens with the defense because Brian Borland has been emphasizing all offseason, the defensive coordinator, how they don't want to be the weak spot in the chain. And he has 1 year left on his contract. He has an option for next year. And he's been tied to Lance Leipold for about 11 years now. I don't expect him to be, let go, but you can definitely feel the pressure. Every time you talk to him at press conferences, he brings up the defense and you need better than last year. You need to do this, you need to do that. I think he knows they were the thing that everyone looks at as like, hey, man, the offense was so good. The special team is going to take a step forward. What is the defense going to do?
All right, let's do two things. We'll get to reiterate the final prediction, but also – let's start with this. How about identifying an early season swing game for the Jayhawks? Could be a conference game early or not one of the non-cons. What do you see as a barometer game early on for KU?
It's actually next week. Illinois. Illinois is a really, really important game for KU. If they lose that game, I feel a lot less confident.
It's at home, right? It's a Lawrence week 2 game, another Friday night game, actually.
Yeah. It actually starts off I think their prime time. It starts off the college football, games for that week. I'm really interested to see how they play. They should be better than this Illinois team. They shouldn't drop them, but they are a tough team. And a lot of, outlets are saying Illinois is underrated this year. They have a pretty good offense like Kansas does, and the defense is a little better than Kansas is. But if Kansas is as good as Kansas thinks they are, they need a bit Illinois, they need a bit Nevada, because you need to go into that Texas game really 4-0. They got to beat UCF, which is a big swing game as well. For Kansas to make a bowl, I think they need to start off as well as they did last year, at least 4 wins in a row.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. And what did you predict them to finish?
I had them 9-3, which, maybe that's me drinking the Jalen Daniels and Lance Leipold Kool-Aid. Maybe that's just me being a newcomer and haven't seen, years of Kansas football losing. But I really do think Jalen is an NFL level quarterback if he can stay healthy. And I think that's a big if, of course. But I think the defense would take a step forward. The special teams were really bad last year. I think, number like 92 or something like that in the nation. They brought in Sean Snyder, special teams whiz, son of Bill Snyder, who's brought USC to prominence in special teams and won a bunch of awards for that. So I think they'll be a lot better on that end. The defense will take it forward. If Highshaw and Neal can stay healthy, a rushing attack that was number 40, I think, overall, or number 39 overall, will probably be a top 20, top 25, with Jalen Daniels. So there's a lot of ifs there, but I look at the schedule. If they start 4-0, they beat UCF, which is another big swing game. I think that's right after the Texas game. You're looking at a 5-1 start. And then I have them losing to Texas Tech. I have them losing to Kansas State. I have them losing to Texas. I have them upsetting OU, which is a big upset. And OSU is another one where it could swing either way, but I think Kansas should beat them just with their quarterback issues.
All right. Shreyas Laddha predicts one of the greatest seasons in Kansas football history. We're at the doorstep. Shreyas, thanks for joining us, buddy.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
That'll do it for this episode. Thanks to Randy Mason for producing the show and to our SportsBeat KC staff of Todd Feeback, Jeff Rosen, and Scott Chasen. Tip of the cap to Kellis Robinett, Chris Kwiecinski, and Shreyas Laddha for sharing their insights. Do you still like reading a sports page in the morning? We have the best digital one in the country for you. It's called Morning Sports Edition, and it covers all the local sports news, then gives you loads of national and international sports coverage. Check it out at liveedition.kansascity.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back soon with another SportsBeat KC, where we talk sports in and around Kansas City.